So here's Karen. All right, yeah, so please share, you learned about listening and then you practice it, and then what happened you practice and what was the effect or the results, and how did you feel about that?
Well, I think about 2 weeks ago, Miranda sat me down in her beautiful garden and gave me an idea of what the seminar would be, pretty much what she's spoken about today. And then, for the first time in my life, one of the first times in my life, I felt truly listened to. So there was obviously a lot of emotion that was released by that, because I was surrounded by warmth and love, knowing that someone was really genuinely hearing me. Since then, I've practiced it, and I've practiced it in all kinds of situations. I remember one in particular, a restaurant on Petitanga. It was a cafe, actually, a coffee bar. And I started to really listen to the man who was the cashier. And he started opening up his photographs and showing me photographs of him on the QE2. He worked on the QE2 for many years. And towards the end...
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, it's a
like
cruise ship.
Yeah. It's the biggest cruise ship in the world, I think,
It's a British-based cruise ship that's named after the Queen. And it travels all the way around the world. And a Balinese man had been in this industry for maybe 10 years. And so suddenly he's telling me his story, and he's the cashier. And there was no one behind us, but it felt as if I was falling into him. I was merging with him as he was picking up the photographs and showing them on his screen, see? And I felt so engaged, and I'd actually said nothing. I had really said nothing apart from, oh, wow, really? Yeah. And he was getting more and more excited, and then he realized that he couldn't do this because he was at work, and he suggested that we meet. Well, please come back again. It's so lovely to have met you. And we were just friends. Suddenly, I'd made a best friend, and all I'd been doing is putting into practice the act of listening. And
how did it make you feel?
So happy. I mean, I think you can tell I was really happy to know that by listening I could make friends. But I did all the time naturally feel the urges to comment, advise, telling my stories of what it's like to live in England, zone out, start thinking about, I should actually go. There are so many different, what would you say, obstructions to listening?
Barriers?
Barriers to listening. And now what I'm doing more is I'm just observing people and what they do when they ask me a question. And I've noticed a lot of people, what they do is they tune down as soon as I start speaking. And they're kind of almost only listening at a 20% capacity, because they really just want to do something else. SMS, computer, think about what's to cook. So they're kind of tuning me right down, and then if there's a trigger, they hear something, they might come back. But otherwise, they've gone, pretty much. And that's quite sad. When you start to notice how many people do that, then you start to get an understanding of how few people truly listen. Yeah.
So that's actually in my book, I talk about that. That's called like the listening, the lowest level of listening.
Yeah.
It's listening in spurts. Yeah. So, but but how do you feel in general? Because you came from feeling like I'm not heard. We talked about a couple of months ago. So how has this affected you? In that feeling like I'm not heard. Is there any change just because you learned to listen more, or what has changed with that?
I've understood that there's a lot to gain from listening to someone, and that really is the first step. Is once you put that into practice, you'll realise that I feel that you can be listened to if you just make the effort to listen to someone else, and it really will be the first time. I promise, it will be the first time you'll ever truly have listened to someone, and it's a bit weird.
With the man in the cafe, did he realise that he was really divulging quite a lot without any prompting, and then want to ask you about you? Or because I can imagine that sometimes happens if you really turn up your listening, then you're going to get flooded with people just
yeah,
you know.
Yeah, I probably can answer that.
Talk a bit, right?
I can answer that.
Yeah, there's more to say about that.
Yeah.
I mean, I just knew he was excited, and that made me excited.
Yeah.
And the situation was that we couldn't really continue, but I'm sure eventually he would have noticed that all I was doing was listening, and all he was doing was talking. And he probably would have been polite and said, or maybe he would have been interested. He lived in England, so we could have been friends for a long time.
Yeah. So that would be probably a longer. Thank you, Karen.
You're welcome.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Yeah. There's quite a few things that happened there. But I want to start with the last thing that Karen, or your question, Kirsty, that did he want to listen to you? See, the thing is, not being listened to is an injury, like a wound inside you. The feeling that nobody really understands. I mean, you know that, right? The feeling of a wound, and sometimes it takes a few times, like for a person to really click on. They just see, hey, this is different. Right? They probably just start with that, especially if they've suppressed so much. They hadn't been listened to, they haven't been able to express themselves. So there's like a wide spectrum of injury there. So people who's really quiet, who felt like nobody, there's no point in me sharing, then sometimes you really have to dig deeper. You have to ask questions more, and maybe at first they start answering only one word. You ask some more. You keep the eye contact to that person. You ask some more, and slowly they open up. I have a lot of examples. I don't have time to share all of this, but from people who are not speaking with each other, or father and daughter that who had been, like, the daughter's been very angry, rebellious, and how just by making that effort, slowly, the person didn't want to look at him, right? But just by being listened to, his eyes are looking at the general area of the eyes of this person. Just keep asking, no, right? Keep asking questions. Eventually, she moves a little bit, like that. So it takes, it depends on the person. But however, with Karen's experience, if you truly want to give, right? If you want to give the gift of listening, what Karen did with that man, he will just feel great. Yeah. And if you truly want to give, you don't really care whether they remember you or not, right? In a way, that is the true gift. He would just feel like, wow, something happened today. He's excited, he feels great, and maybe he doesn't immediately remember that to being Karen, and that is not the point either. This could be done with a stranger. I mean, when you're in a relationship, it's a bit different, and because you have a long-term work, right? A long-term process and program. But when you just touch, we talked about being touched, right? So being touched by a stranger, it's like being given a gift, like pay it forward, or receiving a big gift, a beautiful gift, and then the person disappears, and you say, like, who is that person? But that gift is for him. Yeah. And then Karen, if you really want to make people happy, and I bet a lot of you want to be able to make people happy, truly happy. It's actually by listening, and it makes you feel great, right, Karen?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even if you don't see this other person anymore, you just like, wow, I made my day by making somebody else's day, kind of thing.
And it probably makes you realise you don't really need to say anything, right?
And the feeling was everlasting. So if you have a good moment in life and you recall it, you get a little rush of good feeling. Well, you can bring it back. So it must just be a gift of love.
Yeah, it's I call it a gift of listening. So when you think about giving people gifts, you have to think, oh, what would they like? Is this good enough? Am I spending too much or too little? And then you get disappointed when that person doesn't show their appreciation. All this stuff, right? But when you truly give, the gift of listening, I can guarantee you, the person would feel like, wow, I received something amazing, right? So that's the easiest way, and you can do this with everybody, especially your Balinese or a lot of you would live with your parents-in-law, right? Yeah. So there's always conflict with sisters-in-law.
I'm lucky I'm not staying with my family.
Right? And then you say, oh, okay, I can't say it, and you get angry. You just keep everything stuffed because you don't want to make your husband be in a difficult place. You don't want to offend them, and so a lot of you are carrying a lot of stuff inside, right? And if you don't, nothing happens, and you just keep it slowly, what you're going to do is you're going to start having headaches,
Trash.
and then the ulcer, sakit mah, sakit perut, sakit mah, pusing, migraine, and all that. That all comes from emotions being suppressed. Your anger, you cannot say it, you keep it, and you try to smile, and every time it gets harder and harder, and then you're going to get into depression very quickly whenever you just keep the emotion like that, and then you feel like, life is just about going to work, get some money, and then go home and go to Banten, but there's no joy in your life. Yeah? So that's pretty much sums it up, right? So that's why, imagine if somebody could just listen to you and you can at least let that out. You feel relieved, you feel long and just like, they don't have to tell you anything. They don't have to give you advice. You just to be able to that, it's already a release of emotion. And you can you cry, and it's very good to cry. Yeah. Usually when I listen, within 5-10 minutes people cry. Because, they just, basically this kind of listening, what you do is you give a gift to the other person, a safe space for them to be. That just sums it up in a way. And so there are levels of listening, you listen, and sometimes you think, oh, I have to give them some advice so they can make their life better. If you can refrain yourself from giving advice, it actually helps the person even more. Because then they have to go deeper and feel it. And feeling is when you release the emotion. If you don't feel it, you just talk. You talk to this person, you tell the same story to the other person, and person say, oh, you should do this and this. It might not apply because the situation is not different. It's not going to make you change what you feel. So when you can actually cry about it, that's when you really feel it. That's when you can release it. Right, Karen?
There's been a lot of crying.